guys? This is Josh with JDB Business Solutions. Welcome to another episode of Success Profiles. It's our weekly interview with successful entrepreneurs. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today, Julie David. Julie's coming to us from Mars, Pennsylvania, where she owns her own Premier Designs jewelry business. And she's going to tell us all about that. But Julie, thank you so much for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business and how you get started?
Okay. So right now, I've been in Premier about a little more than 6.5 years. And if you go back in time, 6.5 years ago, I was a much different person. I looked totally different. I didn't wear any jewelry. So it's kind of funny because Premier is a jewelry business and it's all about teaching fashion. And at that time, I wouldn't even wear earrings bigger than a little polka dot on my ear. I was very passionate about that. I just did not wear jewelry. And I did not have a lot of personal confidence, which is something that you need in sales. I did not have that. And I did not have a network of people. I was actually a homeschooling mom. I homeschooled my kids. I now have, I have twins, a boy and a girl, and they are 12. And they are in 6th grade at a private school right now, a private Christian school. And then I have an 8-year-old daughter. And so at the time, they were 5, and not quite 2 when Premier came into my life. And if you backtrack a little more, I used to be a 7th grade American history teacher, and I did that for 8 years, and I loved it, and I didn't expect to quit, but when I had my twins, I fell totally in love, and there was no way I was leaving them. So we went from 2 incomes and 2 people to 1 income and 4 people, and for the next 5 years of our lives, we never, ever had enough money on paper, ever. So for 3 years, I babysat twice a week because that's what moms do, right? So I babysat some other people's kids, and I made $500 a month, and it still wasn't enough. God always provided, but we were bare bones. In fact, our one of our cars died. It needed like a new transmission or something. And so that was it. We just got rid of it, and we were a 1-car family for an entire year. So that was when Callie was a baby. So in Pittsburgh in January, I got to load all of them in the car and take my husband to the parking ride every day at 6:30 in the morning. So it was a lot of fun. So, you know, we had a really great life, but it was definitely a financially strained and simple life. And quite frankly, I was really getting sick of it. And so Premier came into my life. I went to one of these jewelry shows, which was funny because, again, I don't wear any jewelry. And, of course, I had absolutely no money to buy. I was always the girl that went, just to be nice, but said, you know, I can't buy anything. I mean, I didn't buy anything. So I went to this with a purpose in mind to buy my mom a birthday present because I had to do that, and that's what I did. And I was one of those girls that said, okay, I'll book a show because I can't afford any of it, and I'm kind of interested in this. So I had a jewelry show, never thinking that this would turn into anything. But, of course, God had a totally different plan for me, and Premier started to be explained to me, and I listened. That was the one good thing I did, is I just kept listening. And I thought, you know, this is not for me. I'm a stay-at-home, homeschooling mom. My kids were in kindergarten at that time, but I desperately needed to figure out how to buy the curriculum, because the curriculum that I wanted to buy was almost $1,000. Now, where am I going to come up with that? And so I was pretty passionate about trying to figure out how am I going to do this. And Premier did offer an opportunity for that. But again, I didn't have any money to get started in a direct sales business. I certainly did not have the natural capabilities. I wasn't into fashion, so I wasn't one of those girls that was like, oh, I love jewelry, this is going to be so great. And to be honest, I didn't have any friends. And pretty much, you know, to do direct sales, you need friends because you've got to ask them to do shows for you. So I said I pretty much have the trifecta of not doing direct sales. But again, God stepped in, and we got the credit card. Some ladies said that they would do shows for me, some of my old teacher friends, and bing, bang, boom, I was a jewelry lady. Now, what's interesting is that when I do something, I want to do it well. And so I engaged and I learned and I practiced. I did my jewelry show 7 times to empty chairs before I did my very first jewelry show. And that very first jewelry show is $1,000. Now, Premier, I don't know about, other direct sales companies. They just cannot compare with Premier because Premier is such an amazing company. And, God was just so gracious in bringing it into my life. They gave us half of that. So in one night, my very first show, I made $500. Now remember, it took me all month of changing diapers to make $500. I was like, shut the front door. This is awesome. And so I was like, get out of my way. We're going to make this work. And I started to do 6 home shows consistently every month. I did that for 10 months. In that first 10 months of 2005, 2007, I made $30,000. That was like $300,000. I mean, we went on a vacation. That was our very first family vacation ever. We went to Sesame Place. We remodeled our kitchen, remodeled our bathroom. Now they were small, but we still did it. We got new furniture and clothes. And I mean, it was just like hitting the lottery. It was fantastic. And I couldn't keep my mouth shut about how awesome this company was. I mean, this direct sales company, it's going to give me a product. They're going to teach me how to sell it because I really needed to learn a lot. They're going to let me go and sell it, and then they're going to let me keep half of it. What? And so I was just having the best time. I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and so I started to bring people into Premier, and they were on my team. And that just continued and continued. And within 5 years, I was part of what we call the senior leadership, which is the highest the highest group in Premier. And I wasn't quite sure how I got there, but I think it's just absolutely loving what I do. And so now I am what we call a 5 diamond in Premier. So a 4 diamond is a senior leader. So I'm just like one little tiny step above that. I have a very strong personal business. I do about 6 home shows still every single month, and my show average is $1,000. The national average is about $500, so I'm doing pretty good on selling the jewelry. So I love it. I think I've sold about $77,000 worth of jewelry in the last 12 months. Wow. So that's really great. And then the commissions that Premier pays me, it's amazing. The last couple of years, the last 3 years, it's taken this job to a 6-figure income, which is awesome. So to take me back from that girl that couldn't afford Chick-fil-A more than once a month to a 6-figure salary, just, a little over, it took about 5 years to get there. It's just been an amazing, amazing ride. So that's where I'm at right now.
Awesome. So the reason I love your story is you kind of had all the obstacles that other people have that don't start a business, right? You didn't have any money to get started. You didn't have the confidence to sell things or didn't have any experience in sales. You had young kids, two 5-year-olds
and she was 1. She wasn't quite 2 yet when I started, but she's almost 2.
So all the things that hold people back, and you did it anyways. And
I was homeschooling.
Yeah, and you were homeschooling.
Which is a full-time job.
Exactly. So, it's going to be an awesome interview.
Oh, great.
So why don't you start out, we like to do the first thing. Tell us what your biggest mistake was in your business. And the more embarrassing this story is, the better.
Oh, well, I have 2 mistakes that I want to tell you about. So the first mistake was when I first started in Premier, I hit the ground running and was a top retailer right away. And, that average, even back then, my average was like 830 right out of the gate. So whatever God gifted me with, the gift of gab, I guess, I hit the ground running and was doing really well. And I didn't really know what success was, so I just kind of followed Premier's model of earning free jewelry because I couldn't afford to buy it myself. So I just was like, ooh, what do I do? So I was doing really well. And I up to that point had never left my kids ever with a babysitter. So to leave my kids and go do these home shows was a really big deal to me. And to leave my kids to go to a meeting, not so much. I wasn't really like, and I'm doing pretty good. So what it was a little, not too egotistical because I really wasn't a confident person, but just a logical person. I'm doing pretty good. To leave my kids to go to this meeting doesn't seem logical to me because I think I'm doing okay. I would much rather go do a jewelry show. So I went to the trainings, but if I could schedule a jewelry show on the night of a training, I was all over that because I just scheduled all over the place.
Right.
Well, Lauren Weaver, who was our senior leader at the time, she's now a 7 diamond. She pulled me aside and she said, "Girlfriend, you're getting recognized and you're not here to be recognized. And you've got people on your team and they're not going to come if you don't come. And there's more than just learning going on here, why you need to be here." And so that was my biggest mistake, that thinking it's more important to go to a jewelry show than it is to go to training. And I learned that lesson right away. And I've never missed a training since then, and I see the incredible value. So that's embarrassing as a leader that I started, thinking in terms of, well, I don't really need to go. And now as a leader, oh my gosh, the one thing we need people to do is to connect. And I'm going to talk more about that, but keeping it personal and getting to know people is so important. But another mistake that I made is 2 years into Premier, we lived in a house that was 1,200 square feet. So I was a homeschooling mom, and it was a 3-bedroom house. So we homeschooled in this teeny tiny little 8x8 room, and all 3 kids lived in the other bedroom, which was like a 10x11. So they had bunk beds and a trundle. So my 2-year-old was on the little trundle. And so it was a really tight squeeze. And 2 years into Premier, we realized that we were busting out of this, and we trusted our Premier income enough that we decided that we were going to move, which was huge. I mean, again, just 2 years into this business, we are going to trust it enough that we're going to go and increase our mortgage. So I was super duper excited about that. Now, I love houses. I love decorating. I mean, I love that. So I had to get my house totally ready to sell with 3 little kids. So anybody out there that's ever done that can understand what that's all about. Then I had to be the primary person to search for the house. And then once we bought this house, I was the person that painted it. Okay, I'm that person in our family. Okay, so what I did from January to May, that was where my focus was. And that was a really long period of time to focus on something other than my business. And so when I moved in here and I finished painting, I woke up one day and looked at my calendar, and God had done this, really, in hindsight, a magnificent thing. He wiped away almost all of my shows. And for 3 months in a row, June, July, and August, I had only one jewelry show each month. And one of those was one that I did myself. That was humbling, humiliating, embarrassing, frustrating, financially difficult. I mean, I just bought this house and now I don't even have the jewelry shows. Where's my business going? But it taught me a really valuable lesson, which is never, ever take your eyes off of your personal business. And what I did was I engaged in doing the exact things that I teach all of my girls to do when they say, I don't have any shows, I don't have any shows, I don't have any shows. So I had a show. I invited everybody. I talked to people. I went to my, gynecologist's office and said, here's a book, here's what I'm doing. I went out and just talked to everybody and I booked shows. And it just shows you that God has you in his hands the whole time, because prior to that, the first 2 years of my business, all of my jewelry shows were an hour away. And the joke amongst my jewelers was that I needed that hour just to calm down because I homeschooled my kids all day, and I had my kids all day. But really at that point, I needed my life to change, and God wiped them out and brought them back. And almost all of my shows since then have been a half an hour or less away. So it was a really great thing. You never know what God has in store for you and where he's taking you in your business, and always just trust him. But I engaged, and I've never let that happen again.
Yeah. So that's kind of one of the tricky parts about being an entrepreneur too, right? Is like if you had a real job, if you were a teacher still, you'd have to go to work every day, regardless of whether you're moving in a new house or not.
Right.
You couldn't take your eye off it.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, you can say, well, I just won't do anything this week, and then I'll catch up next week.
And there's no accountability. Yeah. You know, there's absolutely no accountability, and it's all about choices. And during that time, my choices were just not good choices. And there was ramifications for the bad choices.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good mistake. Thanks for sharing that one. So on the flip side of that, what's your favorite success story you've had in your business?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I think that really it's the same story, because one of the things about me is that I think what makes a successful person is that we don't give up. And because we fail way more times than the average person. I've certainly failed numerous times in my life. You know, these embarrassing moments. I can't believe I forgot to do this. I didn't do that. Oh, man. But instead of wallowing in it, we get up and we just fight. And so when I woke up and was like, I don't have any shows, instead of saying, well, that was a good ride, which I hear a lot from my girls, you know, well, that was a good ride. I enjoyed it well. Well, it lasted, but, you know, it's just not for me. Obviously, it's just not for me. It's just not something that really, I think fits my personality. No, this direct sales, I would much rather have anybody with a teachable spirit than somebody that's a great salesperson. So I engaged and said, what am I going to do? This is not acceptable. I can fix this. And I did. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think the other thing that I am proud of is making it to senior leader in 5 years. That was not me. It's totally a God thing. Like I said, I just kept working my business and there it was. But I think that, you know, that is something I'm really proud of, that I am a senior leader, because I love this company, and to be part of the leadership of this company is such an honor.
Cool. So what's one daily habit you have that contributes most to your success?
Okay, so I think at this point in time, I need to confess a little bit about myself, which is that I am dyslexic and probably ADD as well. And so, but I know for sure that I'm dyslexic. And I actually discovered that 3 years ago. And that's a whole nother story. But I found out that figured out finally after all these years that I'm dyslexic. Only took me 40 years to figure it out. And my son and my daughter are dyslexic, and my dad is dyslexic because it's actually a hereditary disability. And it explained a lot. So I wish that I could say that I am this really awesome, regimented person that wakes up and does her devotions, then spends an hour reading educational literature, makes my phone calls, sits down, puts my receipts in. You know, I don't. So I am a horrible, horrible person to model after. I think what I do every day is that I do what needs to be done for that day. And I do sort of follow the old Japanese economic principle of just in time, if you've ever studied that.
Yeah.
And you remember that? It is the just in time, but it is always in time. I will stay up till 2 a.m. if that's what it takes to get an interview ready, or you know, a presentation done, or a show in. I see my priorities, and I always work my business. And every day I look at my calendar and I focus on my personal business, not just my team business. And I think that is critical, because when we start to get all these people that we need to shepherd and we need to deal with and encourage and love on, that can consume our time, and we take our eyes off of our personal business. And that lesson that I learned all those years ago has made me stay focused. How many shows do I have? Where are they? What's going on with that? Who do I need to talk to? And so I asked my kids this question last night at dinner. I said, what does mommy do every day? Because they've grown up with this business. Remember, they walked through this business with me from the very beginning for 4 of the years. They went on all the meetings with me. I mean, anywhere I was going to go, they went with me, because couldn't leave, you know, an 8-year-old home alone. So I said, what does mommy do every day? And they said, Mommy, you are on that phone. So I'm very relational. I'm always on the phone talking to somebody, just trying. And my son said, Mommy, you're such an encourager. You encourage people all the time. So I was really pleased to hear that. So I do try to be on the phone and just be encouraging people, and staying focused on my business and doing what needs to be done, just in time.
Right. And sometimes being on the phone is making calls that aren't fun too, right? Like calls you're kind of dread making that you just have to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, yeah, that's a good habit. So you're in a business that, like a lot of businesses, it's impacted by the economy right now. How have you overcome that? What have you done to kind of make the economy not matter?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I'm a historian, so if you go back to the Depression, there was something called the lipstick phenomenon. I don't know if you ever heard about that, but the lipstick phenomenon is that during the Depression, people could not buy big ticket items, but we all need that little pick-me-up, that little something. We like to shop. We as women especially. We like that little surge that it gives us to have something new and fun and to feel beautiful. And so they saw this drastic spike in the sales of lipsticks because women could just go and buy a new tube of lipstick and have a new color and feel fresh and feel beautiful. And I think that with jewelry, it's a similar phenomenon. We aren't as economically challenged as the Depression time, but certainly we're not going out and buying a new car, or a whole new wardrobe, or perhaps a fine piece of jewelry. But we can go ahead and buy. The sun is affecting us. I'm sorry about that. We can go ahead and buy a piece of jewelry. And so what I try to do is I want to make myself have value apart from, and I'm not going to turn myself into my kitchen. I'm going to go this way. Let's try that. Is that any better? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to make sure that I have value, not just my product. And so I go into my jewelry shows and teach them things. So I go into my jewelry shows and teach them how to wear the jewelry to feel beautiful. What clothes are going to look good on your body to make you feel beautiful? So it's like a little educational seminar. And women are really hungry to know how to feel beautiful. And when we give them those skills and give them those tips that they can then apply, they're going to go to the table and they're going to happily spend the money to do that. And so I think making myself have value apart from my product, it's not just about my product. And in this day and age too, the great thing about direct sales, it's the future of America, is because this is a Facebook society and our friends are all virtual. And we are not getting together like we used to. I mean, in order to see people, we have to have a reason. We have to have an event. And so really stressing that this is going to be a fun event. We're going to have prizes. We're going to have a good time. We're going to socialize is really key. And the other thing is I have made it my mission to really get to know my hostesses and make them my partner and teach them, not just expect that they would know, but teach them how to get outside sales, how to get people to come to the show. And I think that is a pivotal part of why I'm successful, is really valuing that woman. And it's my personal mission, and I tell them at my shows, to eradicate low self-esteem. Because of my dyslexia, I struggled my whole life with horrible self-esteem. You know, I told you when I started this business, I had no confidence, I had no self-esteem. And I've learned that a lot of that is because of that dyslexia, because although I was intelligent, I felt so stupid all the time because I can't spell and I can't remember people's names. And, all those things really were struggles for me. And through Premier, the best way for you to build your confidence is action. And so if you go and you do something, like you make a phone call or you go up and you talk to somebody or you do something physical that you were nervous about doing, even if it's not successful, just the fact that you overcame that fear and you did it builds your confidence. So all these years, my confidence has been growing. So when I see women at my shows, I see their lack of confidence. We as women all struggle with that. And so I go in and I say, you know what? One of the simplest things that I can do is help you to feel beautiful Because if you feel beautiful, then you're going to have that little bit more confidence to start reaching out to other people, and then that is going to build your confidence. So I really try to give myself value apart from the product, but then I show them how the product can really impact their life. It's not just something to buy. It has purpose.
So you the whole economy thing's kind of an excuse in your business, right? People who are saying I can't do it because of the economy, it's kind of an excuse.
I think so, because 3 years ago, when I made a couple changes in my business, 2 things I did. I said, what happened was, when we found out that I was dyslexic and my kids were dyslexic, we put the kids into private school. And when we did that, because I had to be completely 100% available to do homework with them every single night, I could no longer do jewelry shows whenever I wanted. So it actually put all these constraints on my business. And so my husband and I sat down and decided that I would do jewelry shows only Friday nights and Saturday mornings. That was the only time in our schedule that we could do it. So it would limit me seriously to 6 shows, 7 at best, a month to do jewelry shows. So it was the best thing I ever did, because prior to that in my business, I was willy-nilly. When do you want to do a jewelry show? Tuesday night, Sunday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, doesn't matter, whatever works for you. Well, when I started to focus my business, I started to organize my life, and I became much more focused. Well, I did that, and the other thing I did was I said I'm going to really commit to coaching my hostesses and making sure they know how to be successful. When I did those 2 things, my retail increased. So this is 3 years ago, in the middle of this economic crisis. My retail increased almost $200 a show.
Right.
So, yeah, I do really believe, and I do shows. I obviously live in a nice community, but I do shows in the neighboring communities that are not as financially successful as the community that I live in. And I have $1,000 shows there too. You just need more people. And you need to educate your hostess on how to go out there, and you really have to know your product.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. One of the things you said, a lot of the sales books will say the best way to get people to do what you want them to do or buy what you want them to buy is to decrease their options. So maybe all of a sudden when you're saying the only 2 days I have available are Fridays and Saturdays, instead of saying what day, any day works for you, that kind of overwhelms them maybe, right?
Right. And that's that's one of the tips that we teach people when we're booking. That's exactly right. And I thought, well, I just need jewelry shows, so wherever it'll work for you. But yeah, exactly. So I'm booked every Friday and Saturday. That's where I'm at. I'm at a jewelry show.
Yeah, and it seems to make sense that if you gave them more options, it'd be better. Like, I want to work around you. Tell me any date that works. But if you just say Friday or Saturday, which one works for you, you're probably more likely to have success.
That's right. And I think it makes me seem more valuable.
Yeah, your time's limited.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So what's the best advice you've ever received from someone else?
Well, Andy and Joan Horner are our founders, and they are amazing people. Joan is gone home to be with the Lord, and Andy is just the sweetest little thing ever, and they are just a powerhouse of information, and they have taught me so much. And Joan, her main mantra, that she would say all the time, was keeping it personal. And I think that this direct sales, any sales, if you are running your own business and you're not working for a boss, it's you and everybody else. And the only thing that bridges that gap is you and your mouth. And you have to open your mouth and you have to make friends with people. And we've got to keep it personal. We've got to be on the phone. We've got to be interested in people, caring about people, wanting to get to know people, and realizing that if we are working to make their lives successful, we'll be successful in turn. So Joan says keep it personal, meaning get to know people, care about people, write notes to people, make phone calls to people. Andy says you can't sell without serving. So if you put those 2 together and you're constantly thinking about how can I help this hostess to have a good time at her show? I don't want her to be sad that only 2 people come. I want her to get lots of free jewelry. So when I look at it from that perspective, my business prospers. When I care about the girls on my team, not because I want them to do well so that I can do well, but because I want their self-esteem to grow. I want them to feel successful. And then financially, they'll be blessed in the process. That has helped me. So the advice from those two is my core. That's what grounds me. And every time that I start to get down on myself, or I feel stressed, or I feel like things aren't going the way it should go, and you start to doubt yourself and say, am I really doing what I should be doing? I go back to their advice, and that grounds me.
So you said in the beginning you didn't have any confidence, you were shy. How'd you overcome that to do this, to get out and meet people and take their advice?
Well, it's interesting. I'm trained. I'm still see that horrible sun. Sorry about that. I don't know where to go. Is it not bad on your end? Okay. I'm trained as a public speaker. So, as a kid, I learned how to speak publicly. So, ironically, I'm a teacher, master's in education. So, ironically, getting up in front of the room, it did make me really nervous. But I could overcome that. What I could not do was the one-on-one talking, which is ironic because that's what I'm saying is the key to my success today. But, walking into a room of people and feeling like they would want to talk to me was overwhelming. I just felt like they wouldn't notice me. I didn't add a lot to the room. Why? If they're going to talk to me, that's great and I'll engage you. But to, walk up to Jane Smith and just go, "Hi, Jane Smith. I'm Julie David. How are you? I'm so glad you're here." No. And so I remember one of my very first jewelry shows during my quick start period. The girls had to pull me in the back and pray for me. I was so obviously agitated, nervous. And so I'm not kidding that I was, and this is a pretty typical story of anybody that has to do, presentations or whatever.
Yep.
But like I said earlier, what builds confidence is action. And what I decided was that these people don't know me. And I can recreate myself into any form that I want. And when I walk into that room, I'm just going to act like the women that I've observed behave. So I put on my jewelry lady shoes and my jewelry lady clothes and my jewelry lady jewelry and did up my hair. And I was Julie the jewelry lady. I wasn't Julie David. I was Julie the jewelry lady. And I walked in and I forced myself to go up and stand by the front door and greet every single person that walked in the door and talk to them. And by forcing myself to do the things that I saw other people doing that I knew I needed to do, within time it became a natural thing for me to do. And now I can't not go up and talk to people. I really redefined myself. And my husband, if you would talk to him, when I give my testimony, I always say, I personally love the money. I love, that what Premier has done and that this is my home and this is my life and I drive a Traverse and my kids are in private school and I shop at White House Black Market. I love my life. My husband doesn't care. I mean, he would have been happy staying in our 1,200 square foot house. But what he says that he could never live without is that confidence that Premier has given me over the years and the woman that I am, because I used to stand behind him and say, "I want to go talk to Jane Smith." And he would go, "Okay." And he would walk over and he'd introduce himself to Jane Smith. And then I'd pop out and I'd be like, "Hi, how are ya?" He's the one that gave me my confidence. And now, we were going to a function a few years ago for Premier, and my husband, who is this incredibly outgoing man, actually goes, "You're not going to leave me alone, are you?" It was such a turn of events. So, action is really the key to success. You've got to just do it. As scared as you are, you got to do it afraid, as so many have said, and you just got to, just go do it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely am the same way. When I go to a networking event, I'm not the kind of person that can just go up and introduce myself and, like you said, you got to be afraid and do it anyway.
You got to force it. Yeah.
Yep,
and it's, what it is how big is your why? Because if your why, if this is the way, now you've got, babies coming. And so when you're like, if I don't go and do this, my wife's going to have to go to work. And I don't want her to go to work. And so your why is pretty big. I got to feed those kids. And if I don't do this, then that's not going to happen. That's a great motivator. for a lot of people, if this entrepreneur idea is just a hobby, it's just let's see what happens. I can't stand when people say to me, let's see what happens. That's the kiss of death. You've got to have passion behind what you're doing, and you've got to have a why. And one of the reasons I may have been able to be so successful so early on is because I liked that there was money coming into my house. I liked that. And I had a pretty big why. I wanted to stay home. I wanted to homeschool those kids. And this was my ticket. And so I think when our why is big enough, our motivation, we can overcome anything.
Awesome. So at this point, we usually ask what one book you'd recommend. You've already shared with us you're dyslexic, so obviously that reading isn't really your thing, right? So how have you overcome not reading? Because obviously a lot of entrepreneurs consider that a big part of their success. How have you overcome that? What do you do in place of that?
Yeah, it's and like I said, one of the things that I'm working through is not being embarrassed about my disability. And instead, expressing how I do overcome it. So yeah, when I saw that question that you were going to ask me that, I said, I'm not even going to, my natural inclination was, forget it, I'm not going to do this interview because I don't read, and now I'm going to have to confess that. And I go to all these leadership conferences and they show all these great books, and I'm so hungry for that information. It sounds so great. And I'll even buy the book and I'll read a chapter of it, and that's as far as I get, because it's not that I cannot read. I can totally read. But it takes me a lot longer to process the information. So I can very quickly lose track of what I'm reading, and I have to read it over and over and over. And it might take me 3 times as long to get through a book and really process it and really own the information than it does someone else. But I started to listen to them on tape, and so that is good. But here's what I do. And this is my recommendation for anybody selling any product. If you are going to sell a product, you need to know that product, and you need to know people that are good at selling that product. And so Premier has this plethora of information. These amazing men and women that know so much about sales, people, the product, and I just connected in. I just watched videos. I listened to audio training. I went to every training I possibly could. I made sure that I went to the rallies, that I understood everything, and I soaked up, because I'm an auditory listener, auditory learner, and a visual learner. And so if somebody lectures something to me, I can learn it. I could almost go right and do the same lecture in an hour, because that's how well I'll learn it. But if I have to read an article, forget about it. So I would really recommend, if you're a reader and there's information about your subject matter, then read. But the key thing to success is knowing your product. So I sell jewelry. So I want to make sure I understand what's fine jewelry, what's high fashion jewelry, what's costume jewelry, how's our jewelry made, where's it manufactured, what's the core of our company. Our core of our company is that we want to enrich lives. We want to serve people. We want to take the profit that we have left over every month and give to missions. Well, where's that going? What's that doing? I don't want to go into my shows and educate everybody on all of these things, but I want to know it in here so that when I'm teaching people, it comes from that base of knowledge. So I am a big proponent. I would much rather learn from these amazing leaders on booking activities and how to sponsor people and how to build your team, because they not only have done it successfully, but they've done it. They've done this. They've done Premier. They know the ins and outs of this company. Then I'm not a big fan of bringing outside speakers in and stuff like that, because I feel like that's great stuff, but I want to know specifically how it applies to what I'm doing every day. I'm really practical. So I've spent a lot of time, I'm an educator. I'm a professional student. I love to learn. And so I think that I've naturally just, sought out all the information I've needed, and it's taught me what I've needed to know. But I do, now that I'm sort of understanding how I can get books on my iPad and listen to them through my earphones, I've been listening to more, and so I'm kind of excited about what that world is going to, open up to me.
Right. Yeah, no, I love the story because it's exactly what entrepreneurs face. the good entrepreneurs overcome obstacles, right? That's the biggest part of being an entrepreneur, I think, is being able to persevere, overcome obstacles. A lot of people would say, well, entrepreneurs need to read, and I'm not good at reading, so I don't. It takes me longer to read, so guess entrepreneur is not for me, right? I think that's what 90% of people do, and then that's why most businesses don't succeed. They have one little obstacle that gets in their way, they're done, and the business never takes off, right?
Right.
So I think that's a great story. It's a great lesson for people. Just because you see how some entrepreneurs that do it doesn't mean that's how you have to do it.
That's right.
You don't have to read because they do.
And it's interesting because 32% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic. And I think one of the reasons that might be is that we've learned to be so resilient and we have learned that failure is just a part of life. I mean, I got an F on my spelling test. Shocking. Okay, I've got to take the next one. And I think that, we've learned that, I know that for me, everything that I've ever done, I was valedictorian in high school, which is shocking, right? Because I was dyslexic. But somewhere along the way, in like 7th grade, I saw my name on the board as for honor roll. And I was like, wow, that is really cool. My name got on the board for honor roll. You know what? I'm never going to get anything less than an A again. And I just dug my feet in the sand and decided that's what I was going to do. So it would take me 30 minutes to do a geometry problem. Took me 30 minutes to do a geometry problem. And I think that I just learned that it's going to always take me longer to do something and do it well. But if I put in the time in college, this was before I knew I was dyslexic, I had a system that I would document my time to study for my history test, and I would study 20 hours. If I studied 20 hours and documented it, and I would rewrite all my notes, and then I would write it in test form and take the test, I had this whole system worked out. And I just thought that was normal. I didn't realize that most people were probably studying 5. But I learned that. So, hard work, I'm not afraid of it. I will paint this house if I decide to do it. I will do that. And I think that is what makes a successful entrepreneur is if we are willing to put in the time and we are willing to we are willing to be resilient. We are willing to keep fighting. We are willing to overcome the objections of others, the obstacles, the naysayers, the people that say, you can't do this. If we know in our heart, I think I can, then, we overcome that. And when you're an overcomer, you're an achiever.
Yeah, and an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point where, almost all my clients are business owners, so I've seen what works and what doesn't. And you can just talk to people now and say, you should never become an entrepreneur, right? Because they're the kind of people that say, well, I couldn't go to work this week because I had a flat tire. Well, then find a way to fix it.
Exactly. You find a way.
So quick whether someone should be an entrepreneur or not.
Yeah, excuses can't stop you. Sickness can't stop you. I mean, I've done crazy things in the midst of, lots of things that should have held me back. And that's just the difference. And, the cool thing about direct sales is that you can sort of be a mini entrepreneur. I mean, you can just be a little hobby. You can dabble in it. You can test out the waters. But what's going to take you to that next level of leadership and then moving on in leadership is to really engage and say, I'm going to deny excuses. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to keep going when I get hit, and you always will. I mean, I can't believe that you would know any entrepreneur that just, went like this, right? I mean, you're going to go and you're going to go like that. And then the difference is you're going to, you're just going to keep on trucking. And that's what ultimately, you got to have belief. You got to have a core belief in what you're doing. And for me, with Premier, I have a core belief in this business, this company. It's not the jewelry. That's just fun. It could be lipstick. It doesn't matter. I love this company. I love what they stand for. I love their foundation. I love the people. I love the integrity. And I love my opportunity to go and meet people and talk to them and build them up and encourage them and, help them with their self-esteem, even just a little. If it's just a hug, if it's just, you look beautiful. And that is what keeps me going every day.
Cool. All right, so I'm a CPA. I have to ask this one question. Just give us one quick lesson or one thing that you struggled with tax-wise when you became an entrepreneur? Because it's a whole different world tax-wise when you become an entrepreneur, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing, you got to keep track of your receipts, and you're talking to a woman that doesn't even balance her checkbook. I never have. I have I'm no lie, I have 3 checkbooks going all at the same time, just so if I can find one. If I have to write a check, drives my husband absolutely crazy. So, this organization idea of keeping track of your mileage, your receipts, if anybody owes you money, I can't tell you, there's countless amounts of money I'm sure I was not paid, because this is not my strength. But again, shows you that if I can make it, anybody can make it. And you want to get to the point where you can pay somebody to help you. And that's what I do now. So before I had my assistant putting my receipts in, no lie, 4 years, come March, I would just hanker down in front of the television with a little TV tray and my computer and a big basket of receipts, and I would enter them all.
That sounds brutal.
Yeah, it was. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So just the hard part for you was figuring out a system to get that all, track all your expenses, all your income, all your tax documents.
Yes, and my husband also wanted me to point out that another thing that he really wishes that we had done is to prepare for success. And so one of the things that's difficult when you own your own business is budgeting the ups and downs of the finances. And to be honest, if I'm going to completely confess, I shop like next month will be better than this month. So that's a big mistake on my part. That whole that check is going to be half of this check. So you've got to put some of this check away. And so that whole, just recognizing the ebbs and flows of owning your own business, that, you're going to have a really good month. And just because you had a really good month doesn't mean next month's going to be better.
Right. Yeah, great stuff. All right, so last question. Someone comes to you and says, Julie, I'm thinking about starting a business. What advice are you going to give them? Excuse me, no matter what industry they're in, whether it's jewelry or anything. What advice would you give someone who's looking to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think that they've got to have that core belief system in what they're going to do. So if it's, a product that they have created, or if it's a need that they see, they need to really believe that they can impact the world. And then they need to get as educated as they can. So they need to seek out 2 types of people. One, someone who's done what they've done or something similar to it that they can learn from. What was the road? What was the mistakes that they made? What are they doing that is really successful? Can I learn from you? Can I ask you advice? Can I call you? And number 2, someone who, if it's not the same product, something similar that is at about the same place, to be a running buddy. Because I think that we move forward at a much faster rate if we have somebody, that's when we run, it's better to run with someone. So if you have somebody that's doing something similar, if it's not the exact same thing that you're doing, like selling jewelry, if it's something they're moving, they have the same desire to do better. They're building a team. And they're running trainings, or they're, consulting people in a certain way. But to kind of hear, well, what prices are you charging? What are you doing? How are you leading? How are you doing this? And to have that accountability, I think accountability is huge, and to be encouraged and motivated to continue to be better. We always need somebody kind of pushing us along. So a running buddy and someone that can be a mentor. I think those 2 things. And lastly, really knowing your product, your company, knowing what you sell, knowing everything about it as much as you can, constantly learning about that. Because the more educated you are, the more confident you're going to be. And confidence is the whole thing. Confidence is the whole thing. So practicing, speaking out loud. If you're going to make a phone call, you're going to do a presentation, say it out loud, not just in your head. I know it's embarrassing, but say it out loud to the mirror, to a wall, pretend like you're on the phone, get that running buddy and practice with them. It's amazing how much of a better speaker you're going to be if you just run through it at least once. So practicing, educating, running buddy, mentor.
Awesome. Good stuff. I got to tell you one funny story. My wife, when she was in Premiere for a little while, and when she would practice her shows, she'd sit me and the dog down, and we'd have to be her guests that she would practice the shows on. And she'd even call the dog down when it was a dog's turn to be a featured person or whatever.
That's good. That's the best way to do it. If you're practiced and ready, your nerves go away. I mean, we are nervous because we are fearful of the unexpected. And if we're practiced and we know what we know, we're not nervous. We're just going to get up there and talk. And so, taking that time on the front end saves you so much embarrassment and time on the rear end. So preparation is really the key to success. And I think successful people realize that, and they don't just, it's funny because I fly by the seat of my pants somewhat because I'm always running to one thing to the next thing to the next thing. But what people don't realize is that there's so much preparation, so much time spent practicing, talking, thinking, writing, what it is that I'm actually going to train on and talk on and think on. And, even a phone call like this, thinking it through, talking it out with my husband so that I could have my thoughts together. That preparation on the front end makes the product so much better.
Awesome. All right, so people who are watching this and love what you're saying and want to hear more about what you do, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website, and it's called Watch or Listen to Win. There's no spaces in there, so it's just watchorlistentowin.com. And on that website is my story. So I give my testimony, and I explain all about what Premiere, who Premiere is, and why, what it costs to get in, and why you would be interested in doing it. It's a 27-minute video. I also have my fashion presentation, so if, you've been intrigued a little and you'd like to know the 5 concepts to do with your jewelry, I have a 20-minute little fashion segment on there, and then it's got my contact information. But then if you actually wanted to see the catalog online, Premiere has given that to us now, and so it's my name, juliedavid.mypremierdesigns.com. And so you can email me the code for the code is actually, I'll just tell you, it's Julie. It's my name in all lowercase.
All right, well, we'll link to both of those on the page too, so if anyone's interested, they can check those out and get in touch with you.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Oh, thanks for so much for being on it and sharing your time and wisdom and even some stories that maybe weren't easy to tell.
Yeah.
It was awesome stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Really